Hello YouTubers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host Novus Gories. And as I said, I'd be doing another Slender video and I have fulfilled my promise. This time we're going to be doing something quite different. Not many other YouTubers, if any really, have ever done this, and so this seemed like something new and different for me to try, and something fun. And maybe it might catch the interest of any of you who are currently looking into the Slenderverse or interested in any of the material. But without further ado, I'm going to get into this. This is going to be a list ranking the most powerful, from the weakest all the way up to the most powerful iterations of Slenderman. We're going from all like the main material, the main ARG series, things like this, and the games. And yeah, we'll just have fun with it. There's not really else to say about it other than that, and I'm going to get right into it. So first off, I think this is not going to be a surprise to any of you. The weakest on the list is obviously the Operator from Marble Hornets. I hope the Marble Hornets fans watching this aren't annoyed by that, but obviously the Operator ranks the weakest on the list for most notably his effect and influence on people's minds can be stopped or at least greatly reduced by certain types of medication. We see this throughout the series. We see Tim and Brian and even Jay, I think at one point, taking medication that reduces the influence of the Operator on them. So this particular iteration of the character obviously ranks very low down the list, simply because he's really the only one out there that can be stopped or at least slowed down to an extent, and I think that qualifies him to be the weakest on the list. I'm not saying anything about the quality of Marble Hornets, it's just that the character itself obviously ranks the lowest on the list for being able to be halted so reasonably easily. The Operator does share some of the same traits as Slenderman obviously, but there are differences, even though it's ultimately the same character. The Operator does not have tendrils that Slenderman has. The Operator doesn't ever really move. In fact, I think he only moves like once or twice. He teleports everywhere. He does have the ability of time warping. We see this in one entry of Marble Hornets where the characters go into the basement in the middle of the day, and when they look out the window it's like midnight. So he obviously possesses some sort of time traveling ability, as well as being able to warp between dimensions and teleport physical objects such as people's bodies, as we see throughout the series. Then again, in the Always Watching a Marble Hornet story movie, I hate to bring this in it because it's not really connected to Marble Hornets and I haven't seen the movie yet, by the way. The Operator does have to brand his victims with the Operator symbol before he can actually target and kill them. So this, toppled on with what I said earlier about him being able to be resisted by medication, easily makes him quite weak compared to the other versions of Slenderman that we have. Above him though, this might be another surprising choice. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Gorilla Hotep from Dark Harvest. Why have I put this one so far down when it comes to mind? Gorilla Hotep seems like one of the most powerful ones. Gorilla Hotep is the Egyptian god of death in Dark Harvest, and he does possess myriad of time traveling abilities, and I don't know if he has limited shape-shifting or even tendrils or things like this, but he does have time travel abilities. But the reason I put him as the weakest is for two striking reasons. The first, the whole reason this series happened is because of the ancient Egyptians accidentally summoning Gorilla Hotep through a portal from the fourth world with a tablet they had. So it automatically implies that he cannot, or could not anyway, infect this world if that tablet was not used to enrage his presence. This again happens in the present day, even though I'm sure he's able to infest the world anyway. His presence is greatly enhanced by use of this tablet. I haven't watched Dark Harvest. In fact, I've only finished watching Marble Hornets recently, so my knowledge of these individual iterations of the character are very limited. I'm only down to the summaries I was getting while doing the research for this video. The other main reason for Gorillahotep being this low down is because he can walk, but he's very weak in terms of his movement. In fact, if you can watch the series, his movements are very fake. You can tell it's a person in stilts, but he moves so incredibly slowly and almost as if he's off balance the whole time, that if he's walking after you, it becomes very easy to get away from. Obviously, he can teleport and he can do all the same things the other versions of Slenderman can do, but he still ranks low down for that. And I believe it was in Dark Harvest as well. He's described as having the ability of his tendrils, which can create like rips in space-time. That's what those are, although he's never actually shown with them. So again, he has a level of power, but it's not as great as some of the other dangerous versions on this list. So that places ultimately Gorillahotep very low on the list. Above him though, I've put Mark Slender from Haunted Memories. Why have I put him here? Because first of all, Mark Slender is really the only version of Slenderman I think that has an origin story, which is pretty cool. Mark Slender is actually a human. He was a journalist, for anyone who played Haunted Memories, or back when it was called Slender Haunt. You would know Mark Slender was a journalist who was investigating a Nazi experiment called Project Haunt in the middle of the woods. He went out with the team to investigate. The Nazis didn't like this, so they were all executed. Mark managed to get away and ended up in a bunker, to which the Nazis burned the bunker, and the chemicals heavily mutated and deformed him, creating the monstrosity we know and love now. Now, it's not really clear if he's actually dead or just mutated and evolved. I mean, I imagine he'd be undead to an extent, but there isn't a clear explanation. Mark Slender possesses many of the same qualities as other Slendermen. He actually has tendrils, although these time they appear as like actual tentacles. Short-range teleportation and mental influence in the case of Slender Sickness. He does, however, move, and his movements are very glitchy, and he sort of glides and twists and weaves his way through the grass. There are, not in Haunted Memories I don't believe, but before Slender Haunt was made into Haunted Memories, in the Death Camp update, there were other ghost-like entities that would come after you. There was a headless ghost, and there was even a ghost with like a chef hat. I don't know, I can't find anything about these online other than a few videos that they appear in on YouTube. I don't know if these are connected to him or these are just other people that died. I'm going to assume they're not connected to him because they don't appear in Haunted Memories since the concentration camp isn't there. So he doesn't have a proxy influence. He can cause Slender Sickness in people, but he doesn't have some of the abilities of the more powerful versions of the character. He, as I said, he can protrude tentacles from his back, he can teleport. He seems to be covered in like an electrical field, which obviously generates a massive electrical sound anytime he's moving. He distorts electrical equipment like pretty much every other Slenderman. And he seems to be able to increase his size, or at least stand up higher on his tentacles at some points. But there is one major thing that happens in episode 2 of Haunted Memories that actually is probably the reason I put him higher than the operator in Gorillahotep. Well, obviously we know he can't be killed, so I mean that obviously gets in this place, but in episode 2 of Haunted Memories, he doesn't appear, Mark Slender doesn't appear that much throughout the game. In fact, he's mostly just paintings on the wall. Throughout most of the chapter, you're being chased by these mannequins that are trying to kill you. But at the very end of the game, you're playing an organ, and when you turn around, Mark Slender is there, basically commanding these mannequins to attack you, and then he ultimately walks through the walls, showing he can actually walk normally. Although it's a bit glitched looking, he still can walk to an extent. So he possesses the ability to control inanimate objects, or at least make them animate, which is something no other version of Slenderman has ever done, I don't think. Mark Slender is the only one I've ever seen command inanimate objects to do his bidding, whereas pretty much every other Slenderman creates actual humans into proxies. This one doesn't, because he doesn't have the ability to do so. But it is a really cool and unique ability, and Mark Slender having an origin story and all this makes him one of the more cool and interesting versions of the character. Sadly though, Haunted Memories was cancelled, there was never an episode 3 made, and that ability was only shown at the end of episode 2. So most of the abilities we know come from back when the game was called Slender Haunt. So for that reason, Mark Slender is lower down. He's ranks higher than Gorilla Hotep and the Operator, simply because of his ability to control inanimate objects and make them animate. I think that's all that really needs to be said about him. Above that though, I have put, higher on the list here, Slenderman from Slender the Arrival. I've put this one here because Slender in the Arrival, he's remarkably taller than most versions of Slenderman. I think he's probably at least 9 or 10 feet tall. This is the first version of Slenderman on the list that actually controls proxies. The Operator had Hoodie and Masky, but they weren't exactly under his control. Slenderman in the Arrival has Kate and he has Charlie. The reason I've put him above some of the other ones, like Gorilla Hotep for example, is because even though this version doesn't appear to have time travel abilities or any shape-shifting abilities, what he does have is the ability to infinitely extend his tendrils. We see this in Memories, I believe, when you play as Charlie in the woods and then the tendrils are coming through the fog at you. And in the final level, Arrival, where you're running through the burning forest and his tendrils are weaving and making all kinds of different shapes as they infinitely extend toward the sky towards you. They seemingly don't collide with any physical objects, so they seem to be immaterial in that regard. So he definitely has that ability, which no other Slenderman I've seen possesses, and it greatly enhances his threat level because now he doesn't even need to be near you to attack you. He turned Charlie into a proxy simply with his tendrils without even appearing to him. That's the main reason he gets this place, is because Charlie. If you look at Kate the Chaser, she's still human, just with a mask, and she does phase in and out between proxy state and human, much like Hoodie and Masky and Marble Hornets, because it was written by the same people. The key difference here that makes this version more powerful is because of Charlie. Charlie is not human anymore. As you saw in the game, Charlie is heavily mutated into this blue skeletal-like creature which makes all these demonic sounds and stuff, whereas Kate is still human. Charlie Matheson is completely under Slenderman's control, which further goes to show he has some hidden ability to completely fuck up the human appearance simply by touching them or enveloping them in his grasp somehow. He also can't be stopped like most versions of Slenderman, except by people knowing about his existence, and for that reason Slender the Arrival iteration of Slenderman is quite dangerous and lethal. But above him I have put Slenderman from Slenderman the movie, because unlike the Arrival, unlike Mark Slender or the Operator or Gorilla Hotep to an extent, Slenderman in the movie has quite a number of shape-shifting abilities. Most noticeably, he can actually walk on his tendrils, which are tree branches. We see it in the final and in the ending, obviously, where he walks through the forest chasing Haley on his tendrils, which is a really badass scene, one of the coolest versions of Slenderman I've ever saw. When he captures her, he literally envelops her into a tree and becomes absorbed into a tree himself, sort of inspired by the bleeding tree from the Fear mythos. Heavily inspired, I'd say. He's connected to the tree. That's not the only shape-shifting ability done. One of his most powerful ones, he shape-shifts into a shadow. We see this numerous times throughout the movie. We see it when the girls are looking at their computer after just seeing all the different sightings of Slenderman around the world. We see a shot from behind them of a shadow moving up on the wall, which, as we know, Slenderman has turned into a shadow despite not actually being there. And I don't think he's invisible, because later on in the movie, when it's just Haley and Ren left in the house, Slenderman is outside the door, and then the shadow goes under the door and comes up into the room. And immediately Slenderman's outside the house behind Ren and is able to drag her through the window, which shows that it's not that he's invisible in the movie. He literally shapeshifts into a shadow that sort of glides along the wall and then teleports behind her instantly. Apart from that, he possesses your other typical Slenderman traits of slender sickness, paranoia, all these things, physical ailments, hallucinations. Although in the original ending of the movie, I don't know whether to even really include this since it didn't make it into the official movie, he could shapeshift into a mansion, or at least part of the mansion, which was made out of the souls of all the children he took. So that is another thing, and the souls of the children also form part of his suit, which is explaining why Haley was absorbed into the tree. So we can see that he has the ability to absorb elements of people into himself to make himself stronger. Now you might be saying why I put this here. This version of Slenderman should be lower down because of the video. He doesn't attack people unless there's a video that people watch that brings him into their lives. And that is a valid point, except that there's a crucial piece of information ultimately at the blame of the movie that for not making it clear enough. He doesn't need the video to influence people. That video was created by Alison Riley, the mental patient, under Slenderman's influence. She created that video so that other people would watch it, and then he spreads into their lives. She was sort of like a proxy in that way. Also in the original scripted movie, he stalks Alison and 6 other girls without even needing the video to follow them. And he burns down buildings without even touching them. So he does interact with people without needing that video, obviously. So that video is just a guide to further spread his influence. For that reason, this version of him is quite high on the list for his shape-shifting abilities. One other thing finally worth mentioning is that, as well as shape-shifting, he literally walks through a crack in the wall in the library scene. He sort of contorts his body to be thin enough that he can fit through the crack in the wall, and when he comes out the other side, he literally just sort of unfolds, and then he's normal shaped again. Something no other version of Slenderman ever does, because he just teleports through walls and stuff. So again, that makes him quite dangerous, and he's also very ruthless. We see him stretch his hands across the room to choke Chloe, even though he's not actually there. We also see him infect video cameras, showing him going into the house even though he's not actually there. So his influence over electronic devices is also greatly more powerful than any other ones that I've put below him. So that's why he's on this part of the list. Above him though is the administrator from Tribe 12. I put this here because this one is easily one of the most deadly versions of the character ever created. His shape-shifting abilities are actually shape-shifting. For example, he shape-shifts into a literal spider, unlike what we saw in the movie where he's just walking on tree branches. He literally shape-shifts into a spider, as we see here in an episode of Tribe 12. He has influence over the Collective, which are an enormous group of proxies that are all under his control and have individual powers to do his bidding. So his influence is huge in this series. He can shapeshift. I believe there was a thing about him turning into a worm or something as well. And on top of that, he has your usual abilities of teleportation, electrical interference, his tendrils, all these other things. But he also seems to be more intelligent, and he's able to communicate with people. So that ultimately places him at the highest part of the list, making him exceptionally dangerous simply because his influence extends over so many proxies. And it's actually interesting to me. You'd wonder to what extent how many proxies Slenderman actually has. There's never a definitive number, obviously, because it changes depending on what series or what continuity. But for a character that's been around for thousands of years, you'd imagine he has millions of proxies, and I guess Tribe 12 with the Collective does the best at getting that point across, even though there's only, I'm not sure if it's 12 or 32, but there's a good number of them there. Surprisingly though, there is one other version that is more powerful than the Administrator. You may be thinking, how? What version could be more powerful than the Administrator, since the rest in other series and iterations possess either similar abilities but weaker, or are just more violent and not necessarily as powerful, such as Emma Anderson. This is going to be probably the most surprising part of the list, simply because not many of you will have known about this particular one, but also because it's very obscure and some people might think I'm cheating with this. But for the most powerful iteration of Slenderman across all media, I have deduced to be SCP-582. Let me explain. SCP-582 from the SCP Foundation is based on Slenderman. We know that, and the creator has said that. Not only that, but when you read the thing, you can see that it definitely is meant to be the Foundation Universe's iteration of Slenderman. So what makes this one the highest on the list, the most powerful? This was very tricky. I didn't know whether to put this as the most powerful or the weakest, because there's a case for each here. SCP-582 is a memetic agent that spreads depending on stories that are written about him. Anyone that knows the true form of SCP-582 and writes about it, that story will become actual fact and real. People can write numerous stories with different interpretations of the entity, and even if they contradict, they will all exist together in ways that their abilities will be dumbed down to the point where they can logically coexist with each other in different forms. People will experience the same character in vastly different ways, affecting them. The Foundation has captured the main version of SCP-582 and written a story that keeps him completely contained. So that arguably puts him at being the weakest of all of them, since he's contained by humans. And also, it requires a story in order to exist. But here's what makes him the most powerful. 3 other main manifestations of SCP-582 exist. Many of these can exist at the same time, showing that Slenderman in this universe can exist as other different versions. For example, you could say the Operator and the Administrator could exist at the same time because of this. These versions cannot be contained and differ in appearance, and people who write stories about them, it becomes through. The Foundation tries to monitor internet to prevent SCP-582 from spreading, but people know about Slenderman as that form, and so he will spread inevitably through that, and the Foundation can't do anything about it, thus making 582 the most powerful. The reason I also put him on the most powerful is because this SCP-582 kind of puts Slenderman as a fourth wall breaking entity. Because of this, it implies that anyone who writes a story, if I wrote a story, it would become actual fact, which means Marble Hornets, Tribe 12, Everyman Hybrid, all the iterations of these characters exist because people wrote them and imagined them to be that way. And so they exist actually as that point. So Slenderman in the SCP-582 world doesn't become one entity, he becomes fucking hundreds depending on what stories are written about him. That's why he's the most powerful. But as I said, there's a case for him to be the weakest if you just hide his true identity. So it was very tricky to place him on the list, but ultimately he ends up being the highest, simply because yes, the Administrator can properly shapeshift and warp time and do all these things and warp through dimensions, but SCP-582 has that power as well if it's written about him, and SCP-582 ultimately has the powers of every single version of Slenderman ever, thus making him inevitably the most dangerous. Now you might be wondering, why is he only I'm not sure if I think he's a Keter class SCP. You might be wondering, why is he only that? Why is he sort of contained and not a big concern for the Foundation if he's, by my description, the most freaking powerful thing in all of fiction? Simply because the Foundation can hide information based on his true identity, which I guess for us, the readers of the SCP Wiki, is the explanation for why if we write a story about 582, it doesn't become real, because we do not know his true form. Whereas everyone else that wrote about it, it has become real. I'm not saying Marble Hornets was inspired by SCP or anything, but in the context of like a fourth wall breaking scenario, this version like for example, Marble Hornets exists because someone knew the true identity and interpreted it and wrote it down as the operator, and people are able to take and spread it like that. So ultimately, yeah, he's a Keter SCP, I think, but he should be something way more dangerous. I don't know the other classes. There's like 32 other classes of SCPs, and I don't really know them all off the top of my head, but he definitely should be something higher than Keter anyway, because of how ultimately dangerous he is. I mean, yeah, he might not be the most powerful SCP in the SCP universe, because there are others that can't be stopped, whereas 582 is partially contained. He is most powerful for the sense that this is the ultimate omnipotent version of Slenderman that can influence all media and exist in all of them and be the same character all at once. Think of it as an explanation for why Gorilla Thotep and Operator can be both Slenderman if they're supposed to be different characters. It's because you can think of it with the mindset of this in mind. But that's just how I've viewed him lately. That's been my ultimate explanation for Slenderman's existence. But I'm going off track with that anyway. That's another topic. So yeah, that is the list from weakest to most powerful. The Operator, Gorilla Thotep, Merc Slender, Slenderman Arrival, Slenderman Movie, The Administrator, and SCP-582. I know this list is probably heavily controversial, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you agree with my list? What entry surprised you? What would you have changed? Do you think SCP-582 should have actually been the weakest version? Do you think I didn't give the Operator enough credit? Or do you think I was also completely wrong about the Administrator? I want to hear your thoughts down below, and give me your own list of what you think the most powerful and the weakest iterations of Slenderman are. So yeah, this video, as I said, was done just for fun. I did this just out of something I had in my mind for a while that I wanted to do, and it gave me an extra video to do, so yeah. Well, that all said, this video was quite long, so I'm going to end it here. As I said, let me know everything in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you're interested in more Slenderman content, I have done other Slenderman videos relating to the movie and to a game relating to Slender the Arrival. And I do other videos as well about different movies and other video games, typically Nintendo. Subscribe if that sounds like your thing. With that all said, thank you all for watching, and please subscribe. Novus Corvus out.